Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. Raffi here, joined by Davian. Davian, the college football season is getting closer and closer, and with that, I think that was a really good time for us to start to get into college football, give our predictions. We have done our fair share of research entering this podcast, and now it's time for us to reveal to the masses our college football predictions. We're going to be going through some of the top conferences, the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC, and then also the American Athletic Conference, and then also, as a bonus, providing our CFP predictions and who we expect to take home the college national championship. Davian, before we get into that, and as is customary on this podcast, how are you? How are things? Are you excited for college football to start up again? I know the answer is yes, but I'll ask you anyways.
I truly can't wait for Oregon to win the Big Ten and the Big 12 again, as they do every year that I predict. If for those of you who've been
Correct.
long enough, there was a time where I was not very well educated on college football, and I made some predictions at that time that were not of the most knowledge. With that being said, of course I'm ready. Of course I'm hyped. Raffi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to get into this podcast. But before we get into the conference predictions and then into the CFP, Davian, AP poll came out yesterday, and I just want to get your thoughts on it. Any teams that you felt were too high, too low? For example, I was pretty surprised to see Texas Tech in the AP poll, preseason AP poll. They were a team that had 8 wins last year, really hit the portal hard, and spent almost $1 billion, if not around $1 billion, to really upgrade that team as a whole. But I didn't even realize this until I noticed them in the AP poll. I was taken aback. I don't remember the last time I had even seen Texas Tech in one of the AP polls. So, Davian, any teams that really stood out to you, teams that either missed the cut of the top 25? Obviously, we see it all the time. We saw it with Michigan 2 years ago when they won the national championship. I believe they were unranked or a very low-ranked team, wound up winning the national championship. So we see it from time to time where the AP poll preseason compared to the end of the season look completely different. But any teams that really caught your eye or didn't catch your eye on the AP poll?
Yeah, I think one team that I was surprised to not see get any votes at all was Syracuse. Having done really well in the portal, having done very well last year, beating Miami at the end of the year. The question is where's Syracuse? I think really, yes, they had Kyle McCord, which definitely played a huge role, and they have lost to Trevor Penna and Jackson Meeks, but still, I feel like the fact that Syracuse didn't get any votes at all is a bit of a surprise. I also question Texas, because this Archie mania, I question it. Yes, I do think Texas is very good, and when we get to talking about the SEC, there's gonna be a lot to discuss. But to put them at number one, not knowing what Archie Manning really is besides a good name, is a bit of a surprise. Seeing Boise State was definitely very good. I was very happy to see that. Yes, they lost Ashton Genty, but I think that the team itself is still very solid. BYU still, getting a good amount of votes is a bit of a surprise, given that they lost their QB, who's going to be joining Tulane, which, we'll discuss as well, Tulane in a bit later on. Besides that, I think, maybe there's some rankings that have shuffled around a bit, but besides that, nothing particularly surprised me. Oh, one thing that did was the fact that I just do need to say this. The Oklahoma Sooners were ranked on the AP poll, but not ranked on the coaches poll, which is interesting to note why the AP poll sees Oklahoma as doing very well, but the coaches not so much. Because they did, get a new QB. They picked up some transfers. I don't see why Oklahoma can't be a good team. Yes, there was some drama with Jackson Mateer, I think is the QB's name, because Rafi, you have Venmo, right? When you Venmo your friends, you like to make some jokes, like, oh, sending money for drugs when you're really buying a pizza. Well, Jackson liked to do the same, except he did it with gambling UCLA game, which is all fun and games until people dig up your Venmo history because you have it on set public, which I don't know why you would. and you get caught in a bunch of drama. But drama aside, Rafi, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the poll? Really, is there anything else that based off what I said, that you'd like to critique per se?
I am fine with them putting Texas as the number one team in the country just because I think on pure upside, Texas has one of the highest upsides of any school in the country this year. I personally do like putting the team that just won the national championship at number one on the people entering the preseason, unless they lose a lot of players. But Ohio State, they did lose a lot of guys. Ohio State, though, is always going to be really solid. The big question for Ohio State is just who's going to be the starting quarterback. We'll get into that shortly, and that's obviously going to be a big indicator of how far the Buckeyes do wind up going. I still think they're a college football playoff team. And obviously, again, not to preview the predictions too much, but Ohio State's still going to be Ohio State at the end of the day. But Texas being number one doesn't really throw me too much for a loop. The team is really good. They didn't really lose too many notable pieces. Obviously, Kelvin Banks was a big loss who went to the NFL draft, got taken, I believe, 10th overall by the New Orleans Saints, or it was taken very highly, definitely in the top half of the first round. So that's obviously a big hit. But I think Arch Manning, in some of the games that he had played last year, did show some flashes. Now, I'll agree, he wasn't by any means, oh my gosh, this guy's going to take over college football, this guy's going to be the greatest quarterback ever. But we've seen it with a lot of guys. I know, for example, Alabama, it feels like you see backup quarterbacks always getting a little bit of time one year, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know if this guy can really take that next step and be a really good quarterback. And then you see Mac Jones have a really solid year before he gets drafted. You see other guys too. Jalen Milroe, who was a big question mark going into last year, didn't really show too many good flashes the year before, had a decent year. Now, obviously, he didn't parlay that into a first-round pick. He got taken in the third round. But Alabama quarterbacks, you see how they are able to continue to rotate in who's the guy. And even though a guy doesn't necessarily look the part, the year before, JT Daniels had a solid season at Arizona State, but really took off at LSU. So I think on pure upside, Texas being number one, I'm honestly perfectly fine with, because I do think if Arch Manning can take that step, which we've seen many quarterbacks that go very highly in the NFL draft, if he can take that next step, then Texas is likely the team to beat, or at least one of the top teams in my mind. I feel at the end of the day, college football and a lot of my predictions, just personally, were really dependent on quarterbacks and which quarterbacks I really liked versus which quarterbacks I didn't like, because I feel like the NFL, the quarterback is very, very important. College football, I feel like that's the same case, and there's two things I like. It's a solid quarterback and good continuity of one year to the next year, where a lot of the guys are returning for the most part. So overall, I'm perfectly fine with Texas being number one. I don't really have too much to add with the rest of these rankings. Again, it's hard to really critique it too much and say, oh, I think this team is ranked at 11, but they should be ranked at 8. I was surprised Illinois, I believe they were 11th or 12th in the AP poll. They were another team and school that went completely under the radar to me as well. But it makes sense. They are returning 75% of their roster. Yes, they're losing Pat Bryant, noted guy who responded to one of my discussion posts one time in a gen ed class. So shout out to him. I have a connection now in the NFL, although I don't think he remembers that discussion post at all. But I sure do. I sure do remember that discussion post. And Illinois, too, with a really nice schedule this year. They don't really have too many tough matchups. Their big one just to Ohio State, and then they have USC and IU. But I think if Illinois splits USC IU and then they lose to Ohio State, then Illinois is going to look really good. Because again, if there's anything that's important to me, as I said previously, it's just to bring back most of the players from last year. And they already had an 8, 9, I believe they were a 10-win team last year too. So you keep the same team. Okay, well, in theory, they should be better and start off at a pretty solid ranking this year. So although I was a little thrown off at first with Illinois being 12th, once I dug a little deeper into some of the things and some of the statistics, it's like, okay, I can see why they are as highly considered as they were. But with that, I guess we can just dive into the Big Ten. I know we've been talking, kind of hitting a couple of nails on the head, but let's just dive right into the Big Ten. Big Ten, I have Penn State over OSU. I was very high on Drew Aller. He didn't play phenomenally last year versus Notre Dame in the college football playoff, but he showed a lot of good flashes of a guy who I think can be one of the best quarterbacks in college football this year. Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton were a dynamic running back duo last year. A lot of people expected them to potentially go to the NFL draft, but both of them, or even hit the transfer portal, but both decided to stay another year at Penn State, which if Aller struggles at any point, you have a really dynamic running back duo. And for college football especially, I feel like having a really solid RB duo is a really, really big thing that could really put a team over the top. So I really do like Penn State in that aspect. They lost Tyler Warren to the NFL draft, but they're kind of becoming a tight end university in a way, just like how we see with a lot of Big Ten schools. So although that loss is going to hurt them, the run game is just going to be really, really good. And I think they will likely drop one to Ohio State at some point this year. But outside of that, I think in all likelihood they play Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, and they wind up splitting. So Penn State beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship, even though Ohio State takes the game versus Penn State earlier on in the season.
So, Raffi, I'm going to have to disagree with you in terms of Penn State and your prediction there. Yes, I do think Penn State's going to lose to Ohio State, especially in Columbus. But I think that OSU has a schedule that, they avoid Oregon. They play Michigan at home. I think it really greatly benefits them. Yes, they don't have a QB coming back for the second year like Drew Aller is for Penn State. But they do have a great quarterback room. I mean, it's still, it was a very close quarterback competition. But at the end of the day, when you have such a deep wide receiver core with Jeremiah Smith, who's definitely going to be a top five pick in the next NFL draft, I really think that Ohio State has the depth and they have the recruiting prowess, as well as James Franklin's inability or the Penn State head coach, I might have mispronounced his name, his inability to win in big moments against elite teams has continued to shine year after year. So I can't bet on him to win. I can bet on Drew Aller to win, and he's a great. And actually, what I'm doing, if you guys couldn't tell by now, I'm doing the Raffi tactic, which is when you give a balanced opinion on two teams potentially winning, so that when one team beats the other team, actually in the rankings or in any game overall, the Super Bowl, whatever, that will be playoffs, that will be World Series, you guys will see a consistent trend where Raffi likes to take both sides. And so this is called the Raffi tactic, where I can say, yes, I can see Penn State winning the Big Ten as well, but I have to pick Ohio State.
I'll buy your rage bait. Penn State beats Ohio State both times this year.
Clip it.
Sure, why not? Drew Aller, I'm going to double down on Drew Aller here. I'm going to double down on this RB duo of Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. The defense is still going to be really solid this year. I wouldn't be shocked if the defense of Penn State is better than Ohio State's defense this year, even though Ohio State brought back – it got better. The unit got better over the course of last year. But I feel more comfortable saying Penn State's winning 2 games this year than I would have any other year over the past decade versus Ohio State. So I wouldn't be shocked, and I'll double down on it. Sure, you can clip me if you want. Penn State over Ohio State, not once, but 2 times in the Big Ten. Moving over, we'll go to the Big 12. Big 12, I'll hand off to you first, but this is a conference that was won by Arizona State last year. Now, Arizona State did lose a couple of key pieces that's going to probably hinder how good they are this year. But again, they should still be a solid team that can still compete for a national championship. Davian, who do you have winning the Big 12 this year?
This is a tough one to call, I think. I think in many aspects. I was very high in BYU until their quarterback was basically kicked off the team. Yes, Arizona State is coming back from, winning the Big 12, and I feel like, they lost some key pieces, and some have stayed. They got a lot. The football program is definitely growing down there, especially after their success in the past year. You also have Utah with who's with a very offensive minded and having potentially multiple first round picks in the NFL draft coming up in 2026. But at the end of the day, I do need to go with Texas Tech, Raffi, because of the amount of money that they put into this transfer portal. Having the number 1 transfer portal, I think, is huge. And yes, I think there's something to be said about, you have a transfer player, so you need to build them into the system. It takes time. They might struggle in the beginning. True, they might, but when you're bringing the top talent, I think that really speaks volume. And I think that this is a same what we'll see the success of Texas Tech and UNC, I think will very much be very similar in the sense that either these transfers click and do well together or they don't. And I think it's definitely a new era of college football that we haven't really fully seen. Yes, we've seen a lot of transfers and things like that, but the amount of transfers, the amount of money that some of these teams are putting in is absurd, Rafi. It's absolutely absurd. And we can talk about, NIL for days and days about what we think it should look like. But at the end of the day, the way that the NIL system is built right now, the way the transfer portal is built right now, I have to bet on Texas Tech.
I am more of the devil's advocate with Texas Tech, where I see a team that just spent so much money and just brought in, just essentially reshaped most of their roster. And when I see a school have a lot of roster turnover, I get some alarm signals where it's just, you have the potential, Davian, not to Raffi myself here, but you have the potential of being a really solid team that competes for the Big 12 championship. But you also have a team where if players don't click and they aren't in the system, they don't fit in the system, etc., you have a team that is likely not going to do too well this year and is likely going to have a lower floor than a school like Utah or Arizona State, which, although they lost pieces, are still, they have the continuity of, okay, we know our guys. Yes, you can use I'm not saying the transfer portal is bad by any means. It's a really good thing, and it's great that we have NIL. But I have consistently seen the transfer portal as more of let's patch up our holes rather than let's just bring in as many guys as we can and really try to upgrade the team. I think there's something that goes with developing your guys over a couple of years, and then you use the transfer portal to address your more significant needs, target those guys, and then be able to be a little stronger. And rather than having 5 guys try to fit in your system immediately, you're only plugging in 1 or 2 guys who just need to make those adjustments. So, yes, Texas Tech has a high ceiling. I'm more on the lower end. I could be proven wrong, but I just see a team that's just throwing a ton of money at a bunch of different transfer guys, and to me personally, I'm a little more weary about that than some others like you. I think Arizona State likely goes back to back. I think they're returning a lot of good players. It's still a solid team, and they showed last year that they can win a lot of tight games, which I think goes a long way, especially in the Big 12, which even though there's not the same schools as there was a couple years ago, the Big 12 is all about winning close games, and Arizona State showed last year that they're more than capable of winning a lot of tight games. So I have Arizona State over Utah. You mentioned Utah having some really good pro-level talent. Caleb Lomu and Spencer Fano, 2 offensive linemen who are going to likely be taken if they play as they're projected to go in the top half of the first round. And Utah, the big thing is just going to be health. Last year, I believe they had 5 quarterbacks get injured last year, and it's just between Cam Rising, who missed the start of the year and then kept getting hurt, etc., and the rest of their quarterback room just somehow getting injured. I think a healthy Utah this year is competing with the likes of Arizona State, with the likes of Texas Tech, Kansas State, another really solid school this year, Baylor, to win the Big 12. But I have Arizona State over Utah, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I will comment that Sam Leavitt has been a phenomenal quarterback. For context, at one point when he originally transferred to Arizona State, I actually reached out to him in his DMs to come on to the Benchwarmer Sports podcast. Sadly, that message was never read. But any case, Sam, if you're watching this, you're still welcome onto the podcast. I agree. Yes, Arizona State, defending champs. There's a lot to be said about that. A lot of returning players. You have, including your quarterback, which is huge. I'm just gonna bet on money this go around, and because I think money talks. But at the same time, we've never seen this before. Honestly,
right.
So
and again, it'll go in 2 ways. You have 2 possible ways. One way is we literally have the 2 different sides of this coin, where you are of the mindset of, okay, you just spent all this money, you just got all these guys, you are competing to be one of the best teams, you will be the best team.
Yes.
And then you have me, who's the more reserved, saying, I like the transfer portal, but I don't think adding all of these players and spending all this money bodes really well going forward.
Right.
You just have both sides of the coin on this podcast, which is good. It's good to not be agreeing on every single topic and opinion.
Of course,
so
yeah.
It'll be how Texas Tech does this year, I think, is going to change how some teams view the transfer portal this upcoming season in the offseason. I think if Texas Tech has a really good year, if Texas Tech is top 10, makes the CFP, maybe they win a game or two, then I think a lot more schools are going to say, you know what, we have so much money, we have so many people backing our school, our football program. Why can't that be us? Why can't that be us? And that'll be interesting, especially a school like Texas A&M, who is in the same state, has, if not close to, if not more, financials than Texas Tech does. If Texas A&M doesn't have a great year and they see Texas Tech all of a sudden go to the college football playoff, I can 100% guarantee you right now in this podcast, August 12th, that Texas A&M is going to be one of the biggest spenders of NIL money next year. I would not 100% if they have a bad year and they see Texas Tech their in-state. I know they don't play as much as a rival would, but in-state rival go to the college football playoff. Oh, you better bet that Texas Tech is going to dump as much money as possible. The tuition for Texas A&M is going to go from whatever it is, probably like $30,000-$40,000 to $100,000 because that's how intense they're going to be about getting to the college.
Look, Raffi, at the end of the day, we're talking about oil money here, right? The two Texas teams, they got a lot of rich alumni. You could call Texas Saudi Arabia of America, because honestly, that is what it is, especially in sports. If it turns out that money really can buy you a team in college football, we're going to see like Saudi Arabia level numbers really being thrown into sports the same way that, Saudi Arabia has clearly bought out the World Cup in 2034 by far. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen. I'm going to bet on the money, but at the same time, I clearly see, I see your take, Raffi, and I agree that, it's good to not always agree.
Yes, 100%. Moving on, let's go to the ACC. We'll see if we have some differences here. I know you tend to like to go a little more off the board than I am. I'm the much more reserved person, and you're more of the Rutgers is going all the way this year and playing Tulane in the college football championship, blah, blah, blah.
I didn't say Rutgers this year, right? Because I honestly think they're going to stink. But, in any case, let's get into it.
Yes, ACC. So I have Clemson over SMU. SMU returning Jennings, their quarterback from last year. Actually had a really solid year and really got better as the season went along. And I was actually really impressed by how well he and the rest of SMU played. Again, bringing back most of their guys. Not many guys declared for the NFL draft or hit the transfer portal. And most of their top guys, albeit. So SMU, I'm considering very highly of. I just think Clemson this year. I think the past couple years have been very un-Clemson. Like, they've really struggled to find their QB of the future for their program. DJ Uiagalelei has just not been the guy. Really, really was rough. And obviously we saw the fruits of that as he transferred to Oregon State last year. Now he's trying to fight for an NFL job on one of the 53-man rosters, or at least on the practice squad. But Kay Klubnik is a quarterback who I expect, similar to Drew Aller, to take that next step and be one of the top quarterbacks this year. He had a really solid year last year. I think he's going to build on that into this season. And their defense also is really, really solid. They're bringing in Tom Allen from Penn State as their new defensive coordinator, who's done great work with the Penn State Nittany Lion defensive group. So Penn State, really solid last year defensively. Clemson, I expect to be just as good, if not better. I think Clemson's defense this year is at a similar level, if not better, than Penn State's defense was last year. You want good secondary, Clemson's got it. You want a good linebacking core, Clemson's got it. You want a good pass rush that's going to get after the quarterback, Clemson has it. The ACC has a lot of decent schools, but I just think Clemson is just superior this year. I think this is Clemson's year where they are officially back in the mix for a college football championship.
Definitely, Raffi. I will agree with you that Clemson, I think, really has a lot of what it takes to win, and honestly, this is one area I think we're going to have to agree on, because when you have Cade Klubnik, which is entering his third season, when you have three solid wide receivers, some of the best in the country, coming back and improving, some of them just joining the program. And then you look at the other teams in the ACC, and I just don't see anything else that's super exciting. I mean, I see a lot of underdogs. Like I see U Miami, I see the Hurricanes, I see Carson Beck. Who knows? Maybe he's the next Cam Ward in the same way that Cam Ward transferred and balled out under the Miami system. But it's also Carson Beck, right? At the end of the day, this is a guy that transferred to Miami because he wasn't NFL ready in any sense of the word. And there are teams like the Mustangs, SMU Mustangs, who Kevin Jennings quarterback, and who's very solid, and then you have Louisville with Miller Moss, transferring from USC, who can really bring out, I think, this Louisville this Louisville offense with his basically arm, and then you do have the Tar Heels under Bill Belichick, and yes, they lost Drake May, a huge loss because Drake May is so good. No further comment needed on that.
In the literal sense, though, to the program, yes, and
Yeah.
you lose Hampton as well, who was a really good running back last year at UNC.
Yeah.
So you certainly do. I will give you the credit that is due to Drake May, at least as a college quarterback.
Yes. And so, you don't have him. You're looking for a new QB. Who knows if they really found that? But you got Bill Belichick now, right? And I think there's something to be said about Bill Belichick, coming to the team, and also, again, having a very, very successful recruiting cycle, even though he joined in kind of late. And I know that Drake May is 2 years removed already from the program, but I don't think that they really found their QB just yet. I think this might be the year under Connor Harrell. But I also think that under Bill Belichick, you're bringing in the Patriot way into college football, and there is success of that already when you look at Boston College. So I think in many ways they're an underdog. They're much of an underdog, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Tar Heels, especially with their easier schedule, beginning of the year, I believe they face, well, if I pull this up, right, they place TCU, Charlotte, Richmond, UCF. Those are the first 4 games until they go up against Clemson, where I think they drop a game. But then it's Cal, Virginia, Syracuse, Stanford. So, you drop a game against Clemson, but if you go 6-1 at some point, right? That's there's a conversation to be had about the Tar Heels at some point. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe we're gonna really see their success next year. But I feel like that if we are going to mention an underdog to watch, it's gonna have to be the Tar Heels. But no matter what, clip this right now. Clemson's winning the ACC championship. There's no other way around it, I don't think.
Yeah, the only other school that I want to hit on before we move over to the big boys, which is the SEC, Miami, Carson Beck, for going into the year as a top 5 pick, did everything he could to not be even selected in the NFL draft last year. And if he was selected, it would have been a 6th, 7th round pick, maybe even going undrafted. So really would have been a day 3 pick, essentially, if that. So smart of him to come back to school, transfer to Miami. I just didn't see it from him last year. When I was watching him play last year, maybe he takes a step. As you've seen, I'm very high on a lot of quarterbacks taking that next step this year. But Carson Beck, the year for him to do that was last year, felt like.
Yes.
And he did not do that.
No.
I just feel like he really showed that if he has a good supporting cast, he can be solid. But even last year, he had a great supporting cast at Georgia and still had a bad year. So I feel like if Miami were to compete for the ACC, it was last year. Last year was the year for them, and they blew it to Syracuse in hilarious fashion. I believe they blew a 3-touchdown lead or something ridiculous like that. It was, regardless, Miami. I get why people are high on them. I'm not high on them at all. Carson Beck really concerns me. All right, let's move over to the SEC. We have gone through a lot of this podcast, and we still haven't gotten too deep into the SEC. We talked a little about Texas. I have Texas being Bama. Bama, really solid this year. Davian, I'll hand it off to you. I don't know if you're going to say Roll Tide. We did not go over our predictions before this podcast. I know you've said Roll Tide numerous times on this podcast previously, but Davian, who do you have winning the SEC? And then we can discuss.
I mean, look, you have Texas with Arch Manning. I think that it's the Manning name. How can a Manning lose in any way? And it's a Texas team that has been, so successful and has, maintained players and had such a great recruiting cycle. With that being said, I have Bama, Roll Tide. Yes, they just lost their QB in Jalen Milroe, but honestly, he wasn't that great for them. In all honesty, so I think quarterback is not that big of an issue. You're bringing in Ty Simpson, who I think can really step up to the plate, who can really play well for this team. I just can't buy into the Archie Manning hype, Raffi. Yes, he was great in high school. Yes, he has shown some flashes, but how can I bet on an unproven product completely? Because I really think that having a very good QB is important for Texas, right? Quinn Ewers, very good quarterback in college, was very important for them to be able for them to be successful throughout the college football playoffs, throughout the entire season. Bama is a team which can succeed without a great quarterback. And that's why I think that having a guy like Ty Simpson, who I actually believe and trust in some ways, leading the team, I have to go Bama. But if Arch Manning balls out, then yeah. How can you bet against Texas then, right? I feel like it all goes down to Archie Manning. If this is the next Manning, if this is the next coming of Peyton Eli Manning, oh hell, there's no reason to bet on anybody else in the SEC. But until I see actual improvement and see proof of concept per se, I cannot bet on Texas. Roll Tide.
You mentioned inexperience, this, that, and then I look at the past Alabama quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts was quarterback 2016 to 2017, who came in unproven to Tagovailoa. I think he was pretty solid in the college football realm. Played 2018 to 2019. Okay, who stepped in? Oh, Mac Jones stepped in. Oh, Mac Jones was a solid college quarterback. We don't need to talk about his NFL career. There's a reason why Drake May is the current quarterback of the New England Patriots. Anyways, Mac Jones steps off. Okay. Oh, this young guy, Bryce Young, steps in and immediately shows solid results throughout the season. So I get what you're saying. I used to think of like this too, especially with Alabama specifically. But you get to a point where you need to anticipate guys to take that next step at the right time. A lot of these guys I was very low on into their second year, Mac Jones especially. Tua I was pretty high on. Jalen Hurts I was a little iffier on, and obviously took for him to go to Oklahoma until he really started to ball out. But I think if there's my year for Arch Manning is this year. If he doesn't perform to his high ceiling that I think he does have, then I'm going to be lower on him next year. I said it last year. Carson Beck, that was his year last year. He blew it. I'm not high on him anymore. I'm very low on him. I still think even with a rough year, Arch Manning still can flash the potential. I like that he's spending another year already after next year, after his upcoming season at Texas. I think that'll bode well for his development. Also, hopefully avoids the Cleveland Browns getting drafted there. So I understand the whole idea about Texas, but I just think that at the end of the day, Arch Manning is going to lead this Texas team to an SEC championship at the very, very least. I get the overhype. I get why people can get sick of it, but I just think that they're going to be really good this year. Williams is going to be great for Bama. Bama has a really, really good defense and can certainly get after Arch Manning. And again, losing Kelvin Banks is going to be a big loss when you're going up against a lot of really solid players, especially in that pass rush of Alabama. They have a lot of really solid pass rushing prospects who are projected to go quite highly in the NFL draft next year if they play to their potential. So it's definitely going to be an interesting SEC. One school that I just want to hit on too, Georgia. I think Gunnar Stockton is a better quarterback than Carson Beck, but he's the guy that I'm more cautious on about the second year, hyping the guy up. He was decent last year. He wasn't anything crazy. He did have a few okay drives, but when he came in support for the SEC championship game, I didn't think he was too great. So I'm more cautious on Georgia than I have in years past, where I'm like, Georgia, one of the best teams in the country, book it. I still think they make the college football playoff, but I'm a little lower on Georgia than in past years per se.
Yeah, same here. I can't really. I think Georgia's a great team, but I can't really. I don't look at the team and I'm like, wow, this is a team that I think can win the SEC. But I can see it being a college football playoff team easily.
Another thing too, once we go through the SEC, LSU, Ole Miss are two schools that I think can certainly make noise.
Makes noise, definitely.
Nussmeier, I believe, is a guy from LSU. A lot of people are expecting him to take a step up and be a potential Heisman finalist if he plays to his potential ceiling that a lot of people are predicting. Ole Miss has a young quarterback whose name is completely leaving my mind at the worst possible time, making it look like I don't know ball. But anyways, both Ole Miss and Austin Simmons. Sorry. But anyways, I think Ole Miss and LSU both have really high upside, and both, I would not be shocked if both, if not at least one of the two, wound up making the SEC championship, potentially going on a crazy run, but at the very least making the college football playoff as one of the lower seeds. I think them playing September 27th, whoever wins that game, I have a good feeling about them making the college football playoff. Ole Miss last year, they had a really solid year, even with losing some really, really bad games that they really shouldn't have lost, which wound up costing them. And I know that they're losing Jackson Dart, but again, Simmons has a lot of hype around him. Ole Miss didn't lose a lot of players, so Ole Miss and LSU are two teams to watch. LSU's defense did get much better in comparison to where it was 2 years ago, where people were wondering, what in the world is this LSU defense? What's going on? It went from being a top 50 defense just outside it to a top 30, 35 defense, which obviously isn't still great, but it's improvement. So if LSU's defense can take another step, then I wouldn't be shocked if the Tigers are also competing for the top of the SEC and competing for a college football playoff spot.
I agree with that. I think LSU is definitely a team that's shown a great strides over the years. Losing Jaden Daniels a few years back has set them back, I think. But I think that since then, in the past couple of years, they've shown a lot of improvement. I think since then.
100%. All right, before we get into college football playoff predictions, just list 12 teams that we think are going to make it each. Who do you have winning the American?
Tulane.
I wonder who you'll pick. Wow.
Roll wave.
Why would you ever pick Tulane? I'm so surprised.
I mean, it's for those who don't know, at one point I really wanted to get into Tulane. And this is a fun story, actually. Tulane, I recognized, it was very big on demonstrated interest. So coincidentally, the same time I was rooting, while I was trying to get into Tulane, I became a Tulane bandwagon. I would post about Tulane all the time on my story. Tulane football team actually once liked my story. And I just became like a very big fan. Tajay Spears now running back on the Titans. I was like a huge fan of him. And now, honestly, I jokingly predicted Tulane, but now I can actually confidently say Tulane. Year after year, they've developed a great football program. They just got the QB out of BYU, who was forced to transfer. This is a guy that, again, there's a reason why BYU I don't think is ranked in the top 25, and it's because they lost their QB. I think this is a huge pickup for Tulane. I think that they're gonna end up the end of this. You could clip this. I think Tulane's gonna end up being ranked in the top 20 on the AP poll by the end of the season. I think they're a great team all around. I think that they built a great football program over the years, and I don't see why they'll do any worse than they did last year, especially given the fact that they've greatly improved, I think.
Yeah, the winner of the AAC typically, in my mind, finishes between that 15 to 20 range. Not good enough necessarily, unless it's just a random year, like when Cincinnati was really, really good, where you see one of them in the college football playoff. But in all likelihood, I think that 15 to 23 range is a pretty good range to put. Just one of those spots reserved for whoever wins the American Athletic Conference, which Tulane, again, as you kind of hit the nail on its head, I'm good with Tulane too. If you're good with Tulane, that's really all I'm going to add with the American. They have, I believe, Navy is going to be interesting. Army is going to be very interesting. I know they're not in the American, but that's a school that a lot of people are hyping up too. Yeah. Let's get into some college football playoff predictions before we end the show. So I'm just going to roll through my 12, and maybe you'll pick up on whoever I say. So not in order necessarily, but kind of close to order. Texas, Penn State, Clemson, Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, Arizona State, SMU, Illinois, Oregon, LSU. I really like Illinois' schedule, so I have Illinois in there. Oregon has a really nice schedule. When I'm looking at these schools that are in the bottom that I still think could potentially get into the college football playoff, I like to look at the schedule. See, Indiana last year was a really good case in point of that, and SMU last year as well, where they had a couple decent wins, but overall were able just to beat the teams that they were expected to beat and got away with some close wins. And when you're a 1-2 loss Power 4 school, you're going to wind up getting in. So I expect Illinois and Oregon to be able to scrape by. LSU, it's like what I said with Ole Miss and LSU. Whoever wins that LSU-Ole Miss matchup essentially is reserved that spot. And then the last team making up the non-Power 4 winner, I have Boise State.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Boise State as a non-Power 4. To break down yours, Illinois, I'm a bit, more skeptical of. I think if I was to make my playoff predictions, man, this is tough. I always hate doing this because I always butcher this as well. You know what? We're gonna ask Chuck.
See, my thing. Well, while you think about it, I'll just say Illinois too. You look at their schedule; their toughest matchups at Ohio or at home versus Ohio State. And I'm not saying they're going to beat Ohio State, but I'm just saying their toughest matchup is a home game versus one of the top teams in the country. And you have USC at home, and you're playing Indiana away. Those two games are back-to-back. You're going to lose to Ohio State in all likelihood. But if you split Indiana, USC, and you take care of business the rest of the way, if you're a 2-loss Illinois team who one of their losses is against Ohio State, I think that's good enough to make the college football playoff. We've seen it last year that being a 1-2 loss, I keep saying non-Power 5, Power 4 school should be good enough to get into the college football playoff. I don't think that's a ridiculous opinion in my mind.
Yeah. So one of my teams I'm going to say, so I'll go through it. Texas, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, like we mentioned. Raffi, I know we both hate this team, but Notre Dame, I think.
No, I have Notre Dame out. I don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. I will give Notre Dame credit. They did a good job making their schedule this year. If they do only lose one game or go undefeated, you will see me give credit to them, which is very, very hard for me. Actually, it's one of my least favorite things to do is to give Notre Dame credit. I will give them credit if they wind up losing a game at most. I'll give them credit. I'll throw them into the college football playoff. I'm fine with that. They have Miami away. They have USC. They have A&M away. They have Boise State. Yes, with no JT, but still Boise State, as we've mentioned numerous times, a really solid school still going into this year. Obviously, the big thing is who's their starting quarterback going to be. Riley Leonard, no longer the quarterback in Notre Dame. So we'll see what winds up happening. It's a very tough schedule. It's a much tougher schedule by Notre Dame standards than past years where it's, we'll just take Charlotte and then we'll play UTSA, but we'll play them away because we'd want a tough game for first. They actually bulked up their schedule a little bit, so I'll give them credit for that. But with the unknowns about the starting quarterback and some of those games being honestly pretty tough games, especially A&M and Miami away, that's why I have Notre Dame losing, just because, or not in the college football playoff, because I wouldn't put a 2-loss Notre Dame in the college football playoff. 1 loss, sure. 2 loss, absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean,
join a conference.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I think that's a good assessment on Notre Dame. I just think that they're a great team, and given their, I think they're a more difficult team in the schedule, they can have more chance to prove themselves. So I've again, like I mentioned, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, of course, Roll Tide, Penn State, Oregon, Clemson, Notre Dame. Tennessee, I think they're a great team as well. And then I have Texas Tech and Boise State. Yeah.
All right. And then before we close, national championship, give me Texas versus Penn State. And I have, triple down. Penn State beats Texas, wins the national championship. Jim Harbaugh, people kept dogging on him for a couple years, and then he finally broke through. This will be the year of James Franklin. Penn State, Drew Aller over Texas in the national championship game.
All right, that's a whole lot of yap from you, Raffi. Look,
nice story. I'm not real and all that, or Or sorry to hear about
Yeah.
that. We're really happy
Look,
for you.
I mean, man, okay, if Archie Manning really does prove himself and he is like what people say he is, I do see Texas in the national championship. I just don't believe in that yet. So I have Bama against Ohio State, and I have Ohio State winning it all.
Lovely. All right. Well, that was a very, very in-depth and long podcast. We probably could have kept talking for another half hour or two.
Oh, definitely.
If we really wanted to. But that'll do it. We'll close the show on that. We'll see what ends up happening. But as always, let us know your thoughts on the podcast in the comments below. Who do you guys like to make the college football playoff? Who do you guys think is going to win? Who do you guys have winning these respective conferences that we discussed today? Let us know in the comments below. For David, I'm Raffi. We hope you enjoyed. College football kicks off very, very soon, and I cannot wait. I know David can't wait either. And yeah, with that, have a good one, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. See ya.
Peace.